Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Yasmine S, cardiologist and best-selling author, and this is my podcast, Positive Vibes on the Sunny Side. Each episode, my goal is to bring you uplifting stories and insights to inspire you to live your happiest, healthiest, most positive life. So thank you for joining me. As you'll see from today's interview, I'm talking with the producer of the upcoming film, Brotherhood, and I have a special surprise for you if you stick around to the very end. If you can do that right after the interview, you'll hear me sing the song from which the movie takes its name. Now, you might hear me sing on this podcast from time to time because I believe in the power of music to convey beauty and positivity, and because I'm a professionally trained first soprano and have performed in concert halls and on stages across the world for live audiences of over 1,000 at times. So I want to share this with you whenever I can, in whatever small way I can, and I think what I have prepared for you today really does fit the topic of this podcast episode, as you'll see. Hello again. I'm so excited for today's interview because my guest today exemplifies every pillar of my orchid model for positive living. That's O for optimism, R for resilience, C for creativity, H for health, I for integrity, and D for determination. His name is Daren Smith, and he is an independent film producer, author, and founder of Craftsman Films, dedicated to building a truly independent film ecosystem. As the managing partner of Producer Fund One, he is committed to financing and creating independent films that deeply resonate with audiences and have the power to change people for good. With a vision centered on empowering creatives, Daren has spent his career transforming the film industry by helping filmmakers build profitable, impactful projects that allow them to fully realize their creative aspirations. Based in Utah, Daren draws inspiration from the mountains and the outdoors, translating that spirit into films that capture the depth and beauty of the human experience. Last year, Daren and his team released the film Faith of Angels, and in the years before that, the films The Carpenter and What Comes Around. This year, he's working hard on a film titled Brotherhood, and we'll be talking more about that in our interview. Daren is the co-host of the podcast Truly Independent, Demystifying the Indie Film Journey, and he is also the author of 2 books, and I have read both of them, the first being Craftsman Creative, which introduced his movie framework, that's movie in all caps, and I'm sure Daren will tell us more in a bit, and his latest book, Blockbuster, How Independent Creators Can Build Massively Profitable Businesses. And as always, folks, links to where you can find the books I mention and the people I interview will be in the show notes. Now, I got to know Daren a couple of years ago when I was seeking a successful path forward for my own creative business, Last Sky Writing, LLC. And just to sum up, I'd like to read you my own paragraph about Daren from the acknowledgments section of my debut novel, The View from the Cliffs. Daren Smith, whose phenomenal Craftsman Creative program I stumbled upon seemingly by chance, only to recall later that true coincidence is rare. It's not an understatement to say that Daren and his program helped change my life and turn around my creative business. So Daren, thank you for your generosity and all you have done to help fellow creative entrepreneurs. And Daren, welcome to Positive Vibes.
Wow, wow, wow. What an intro. Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show, and it's certainly an intro that's well deserved. Now, Darren, my listeners know that I love to explore career journeys on this show.
Mm,
So, could you first tell them what a truly independent film producer does and how you became one?
Absolutely. We could take the whole time just explaining what a film producer does, but I'll keep it short for the audience. I like to say that the producer is responsible for everything. And so whether it's something small or something big, you're responsible for the entirety of the movie. It really starts and ends with you. And so whether it's putting out fires on the day, stuff that's breaking, or people that didn't show up, or a location that, isn't available as we're loading in, or the bigger things like packaging, finding the actors, the director, the script, the story, the distribution. How do we connect with the audience? We're responsible for all of it. There's many flavors of independent producers, but I like to consider myself almost like a lead producer. So the one who's finding the story and then crafting the architecture of how we're going to put the story together with the right budget, the right team, the right distributor, so that it can reach the right audience.
And what makes you independent? What's different about what you do compared to those, maybe some of the other Hollywood movies we see?
Yeah, I think of it in two ways. One is like the really accurate description of I'm not part of a studio. So I don't work for Disney or Sony or Paramount or Warner Brothers as an executive or an in-house producer. I'm independent of those studios. So I live in Utah. I don't work in Hollywood. I'm kind of outside the studio system, so I'm independent that way. But I also like to think of it as non-dependent. So this is a term that's been coined by Ted Hope, who's also an independent producer. He calls it non-D filmmaking, Nonde, so non-dependent, meaning we're making movies whether or not people give us permission to do so. We're not waiting on a gatekeeper to give us money or to give us distribution or to say, yes, you can make this movie. We're saying we have the resources ourselves. There's an abundance of talent, there's abundance of stories, and there's a lot of demand in the marketplace for the types of stories that we want to tell. So we're going to put it together ourselves, almost acting like a mini studio or an independent studio, and we're going to do all of those things on our own.
And how did you get to this place in your life? I mean, you weren't always a producer, right?
Correct. I didn't come out of the womb this way, but we definitely, we all have these kind of long and windy paths that we place us in any moment that we find ourselves in. So, without being super long-winded, because I don't know how much the audience will enjoy the story, but I think it resonates as I tell it because everybody can see themselves in a similar creative path, especially if they're creative individuals. So I grew up loving music. I remember going to the Sacramento Jazz Jubilee every year from the time I was in the womb up until I left for college. And I turned out to be a saxophone player. I was a jazz saxophone player. I went to university on a saxophone performance scholarship thinking music is the thing. That's what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. And I quickly, came face to face with reality and going, oh, I'm actually not good enough to do that. Nor do I want to become good enough. That was going to require hours a day of practice and complete devotion to the craft of being a performer. And even then, it was very unlikely that I'd have a sustainable career performing jazz saxophone, right? So it's like I could be a performer or I could be a teacher. Neither of those paths really felt like the right alignment for me.
Mhm.
And so I kind of expanded and started thinking about, well, what else is music adjacent? So there's recording and there's film composing and there's all these other areas. And I really got into music. I was recording. I toured with a band called Neon Trees and Imagine Dragons that are both from here in Provo. And I really loved doing sound, like live sound and recording. But after a few years of that, while I was still in school, I was like, I don't know that music is the right lifestyle for me because it's a lot of nights and weekends and traveling and long hours and long days. I remember doing a show locally that was like a 22-hour day. I started at 6 in the
Wow.
morning and then wrapped at 4 a.m. the next day because that's how long the day was. I'm like, this isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
So as while I was still at university, I decided to do my internship with a gentleman that was doing post-production sound. So that means once the movie is filmed, that's the production portion. Post production is everything that comes after that. So the editing, the music, the sound, the color, all of that stuff that happens after the movie's filmed. I got into post production sound and fell in love with the movie side of things and quickly pivoted to be like make that my career. So I was doing that for a few years. I ended up partnering with a director of one of the movies that I worked on. We started a little boutique video production company where we were doing everything from short films to documentaries to industrials and commercial work. And the goal from about 2007 on was we're going to make movies. That was the dream. But we'll do all this other video stuff to pay the bills. But the goal is make movies. And I kind of became the de facto producer out of the two of us because he was writing, directing, filming, editing, doing visual effects, all of those things. I was just doing music and sound on the post side. So I had a little bit more bandwidth. So I started doing budgets and schedules and finding locations and finding companies that would hire us to do business or to do work for them. And those are the jobs of a producer. And by the time I left that business in 2017, I really was a producer. So I left that business and I went and produced on a TV show for 4 years. In the course of that, I produced a TV pilot, I produced a documentary project. And after 4 seasons of that show, got called by the director of that documentary project to come and produce her movie. So it took 12 years from when I decided I wanted to be a producer to actually producing my first movie. And since then, I've done 4 other films, and now I'm raising a fund to do 10 more.
So you obviously love film production, as
I
opposed
love
to like
film.
TV show, that you had worked on before.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about film where it's just, a really tight, contained story that you get to tell and you get to have an impact on someone in just a few hours. I think TV is also exciting. I love watching TV. I don't have as much experience on the show I did was more of a reality show rather than a narrative show. So it wasn't scripted. It didn't have actors. It was, real people going through their day and we would film it. It was an amazing show and I loved the experience, but it wasn't scripted. So getting into scripted, like narrative feature films really landed as like, oh, this is the thing I want to do. Um, Through the course of this fund that I'm raising that you mentioned in the intro, there's definitely opportunity to do a couple of TV projects. So I'm excited for those.
Ah, so that might be in the works coming
Yeah.
later. Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. It was funny that you mentioned you're a saxophone player. I did not know that because I'm also a saxophone player. I
No
play
way.
alto sax, yeah, and yeah, I couldn't make
Amazing.
a living doing that either. So it's you you
You
learn
probably
that pretty
can't see it in
fast.
the video, but my tenor's just sitting right in the corner over there.
Oh, tenor! Wow, wow.
Yeah. I played all of them though. And when I was in school, I had to learn how to play everything. I played
Yeah.
clarinet, I played flute and piccolo, I played soprano, alto, tenor, barry. Like it's, when you're doing it as a as your major,
Yeah, the
you go all
woodwind.
in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, wow. Well, so as a film producer, how do you choose the films that you're going to do? How do you choose your next project?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question. I think it starts with the thesis. So for me, having a fund was kind of a forcing function to say, what type of movies are we going to make?
Mm.
And what I landed on was meeting the demand that I saw in the marketplace being me and my wife, meaning like we would right now in middle of February or early February 2026, there aren't any movies I can take my whole family to. We have 3 boys, they're 11 through 15. And the last movie that came out that we saw in theaters was Zootopia 2 back in December. It's been
Yeah,
almost 2 months since
yeah,
we've seen a movie in theaters, and we love going to theaters to watch movies. We would probably do it twice a month if we could. There's just not enough family friendly, values based sort of movies that come out. So we don't go. And in my mind, as a market or an N of two, me and my wife, it's like, well, if we have that demand, I'm sure everybody else does, right? That's in
that's
our same
right. Yeah,
situation. And that's tens of millions of people. So for me and what the movies I'm making going forward, I call them values based, family friendly films, the type of movies that spark conversation and can change people for the better. And people instantly kind of understand what I'm talking about when I explain
yeah,
it that way.
mm,
So when I look for films, first they have to kind of fit under that umbrella of values based, family friendly. And then I'm looking for leverage. I'm looking for two things actually. I look for leverage and tension. So the leverage piece is what can I bring to the table to make this work? And that's a process called packaging. And we don't need to go into it today, but it's essentially like, can we pair a script with a good team of people and the right distribution for the right audience so that it works? So I'm looking for leverage all over the place. And second, I'm looking for tension, meaning, do I feel compelled to make this movie? Is there some sort of pull where I'm leaning in and going, I have to do this because if someone else does it, I'm going to be really mad. Like that's what I'm kind of searching for internally. And people hate that answer because when screenwriters or directors ask me, well, what are you looking for? I go, leverage and tension. And they're like, I don't know how to give you that. I'm like, I don't know either. It's the I know it when I see it
You
type
know it
answer.
when you see it, right?
So that's really what I'm looking for and how I choose the projects that we're doing through the fund.
And what excites you most about the process, about what you do every day?
Mm. There's a macro and a micro answer to that. So the macro is impact. I'm a big fan of impact. I think stories have a way of impacting people in a way that nothing else does. There's a quote that I love that's on my fund page on my website. It says, "We are convinced finally to change by hearing the stories of those who risked and triumphed."
Hmm. I love that.
That just hits, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
So
does.
that's a real driving thing of like the big picture vision, mission, values of like why I'm doing films is to tell stories that can change people for the better. But the micro answer is um I really love the architecture of it all. Like my brain loves systems and processes and architecture and optimization. And so, I was looking after these four films that I'd produced and I was looking at the success or lack of success of these movies and trying to figure out what do I do next and how do I do it better. And what I realized was, man, this indie film model is really broken. It
Hmm.
doesn't work for anybody involved. There's four parties that really have a stake in this and they're disconnected and it's not working for any of them. You have investors who are financing the films, you have the filmmakers who are making the films, you have the distributors who are getting the films to market, and then you have the audience. Well, if you think about it just like in that quick summary, it's like, yeah, no, this isn't working at all. Because if it is working, the investors would keep investing, the filmmakers would keep making good movies, the distributors would be overwhelmed with good product, and the audience would be there every weekend because they can't get enough. And that those things aren't happening. So I took a real step back and looked at, well, what would a different model look like? How can we serve all four of those parties that are invested in this indie film space and make it work for everybody? Where it's not, well, let's rob from Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. Like, let's take advantage of the investors so we can make our movie. Well, that's not a sustainable model. Well, let's force a movie in through a distributor and the audience doesn't show up because they don't care. Well, that doesn't work. So it was really like, how do I solve this problem? And for me, it was about architecture and systems and optimization, all the things that I love. So the day to day thing that gets me up and gets me excited is like, I get to go tinker, I get to go tweak, I get to go optimize. And even if I'm on a call with an investor, they're part of the system. And so I'm like, do you want to come play? Like, we're going to go build this thing. It's going to be awesome. And they can kind of feel that energy of, this guy's having fun. Like, well, I want to have fun. Like, let's go have fun making this stuff. So it's those two things, the big impact and the daily, like, just fun of it all.
And your enthusiasm is contagious. I know
I
that,
hope
and I
so.
can tell
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
how do you find investors? Because, first of all, let's step back and say, why are independent films important? What should people know about independent films
Hmm.
and then why you need investors for them and why it's important to make them?
Okay, I'm gonna pull up another quote for you because I think this is a
Okay.
good answer. This is also on my fund page. Um, God's purpose for the artist is to inspire, to give us visions of ourselves that we might not otherwise see, to make us better than we would have been. The world is better for the arts and artists in it. Few earthly things bring joy more fully to the world than the arts. And that's from Russell Ballard. So I mean, that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. But why do you think in our society is it so hard to get people to see that? Because, as an independent author and being an independent creative myself, I see other creators struggle with this all the time, and you do too, and that's why you do what you do. But why? I guess could you just talk about that some more?
Yeah. I think a big part of the struggle that you're probably trying to get to or highlight or find an answer to is this idea that there's an imbalance between supply and demand.
Mhm.
So I'm taking you from the philosophical or the theological to the practical of like what's actually going on in the marketplace. And that's why I like writing these books because I can kind of float between both sides. I am an artist at heart, as I explained with my music background and everything, but I love the business side and figuring out all of that out. And I can kind of bridge that gap and have a foot on both sides for the artists that are struggling to figure it out. So the biggest thing that I think is happening is there's an imbalance between supply and demand. There is too much supply, not enough demand, right?
Mhm.
So if you think of a studio like Disney, every single filmmaker who's making a Disney type film would love for Disney to distribute their movie, right? Because
Right.
they're the number one or number two every year studio as far as box office results, right? Billions of dollars in box office every year. They represent 20 to 25% of domestic box office every year. It's crazy. It's a
Wow.
big business. They release 10 to 20 movies a year. So if that's their capacity, and there are, I don't know, 200, 2,000, 2,000,000. How many filmmakers would love to
Yeah.
have them distribute their movie? Well, there's too many. There's only 20 slots. So as soon as there's 21 people that would like would like Disney to distribute their movie, they're out of luck, right? And we have a crazy imbalance where there's way more supply from the artists than there is demand or capacity from, let's call it the investors, the distributors, and the audience, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
can see it with the audience now because, Netflix is putting out a movie or two every week. All the streamers are putting out tons and tons of content. There's however many millions of hours of content uploaded to YouTube every day. You've got TikTok and Instagram Reels. Now you have short form and vertical video and micro dramas that are adding to the mix. So there is not just a flood, like an exponential sized flood of content. There's too much supply for the capacity or the demand that we have. So even if I were to spend every waking minute consuming media,
Yeah.
it would be a drop in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Of what content is being released. So it's the same thing for every single artist. You look at how much video is going out, how much writing is being published every day, how many pictures are being posted online, how much art is being created. There's more supply than demand.
Yeah.
And the reason I think filmmakers, artists, musicians, photographers, dancers, writers, etc., are struggling is because they're just continually feeding that broken model. They're saying, well, I'm just going to create more and create more and create more and hope that my craft gets good enough. And it's the if you build it, they will come kind of model. The flip side or the solution that I think exists is to understand and then align with the demand that currently exists in the marketplace. So why is Taylor Swift the biggest, bestest, female goddess of a musician on the planet? Well, because she understands these principles really, really well. She understands supply and demand, and she understands
Yeah.
being overvalued by an audience of people. And so she can't really make that much money from streaming her music. Why? Because there's infinite supply. Anyone, anytime, anywhere can stream a song on Spotify or Apple Music, and she makes a fraction of cents, right? Every single time
Right.
someone streams it. But there's no possible way to correct that imbalance of supply and demand when the demand is, or when the supply is infinite. So what does she do? Creates a tour.
Yeah.
What do you have built in? Capacity, right?
Yeah.
There's
Right.
seating capacity, there's number of cities, there's number of days that she's in each one of those cities. And what happened? She sold out every single one. Tickets go 100x from $150 to $15,000 to be in the front row. And then she goes, okay, well, I made billions of dollars on a tour. What else can we do? Well, we have this asset where we could take a video of the tour and it costs her maybe $1 million. Let's put that in theaters. What happens in theaters? Limited screens, limited number of seats, limited time in theaters. So all of a sudden, she makes another $150 million in theaters. And then she did it again last year where she said, oh, by the way, I made a little behind the scenes kind of documentary video. It's in theaters for one weekend only. So what happened? It's crazy because she announced it on Instagram. She probably had the back end already figured out with AMC theaters. But she said, "Hey everybody, I have a movie coming out. It's a little documentary thing for my new album. You can only see it this weekend, 3 days only. Then it's out. Then it's gone. You cannot see it in theaters after that." The theaters had so much demand that they were dropping screenings of studio
Oh
movies
my
to
goodness.
add more screenings of the Taylor Swift documentary so that they could make and capitalize on as much of that demand as possible. So when you understand the proper balance of supply and demand, and when you're meeting the actual demand that's in the marketplace, man, that's where you get oversubscribed. You have more people than you have supplier capacity, and you can be really, really, really profitable as experienced by Taylor Swift. Now, quickly, I will add a caveat. Everybody says, well, yeah, that's Taylor Swift. Yes, it is. But she followed true, proven principles to become Taylor Swift. So
Right.
you can be the Taylor Swift of the thing that you're doing. You can become the person everybody thinks about when it comes to, for me, values-based independent film outside of the studio system. For Jason Blum, it's, mid-budget horror films that deliver every single time. For Pixar, it's a certain type of movie. For, another company, it's a different type of movie. So you can become the sort of top person in your niche if you understand all these principles that we just talked about.
And people know what they're going to get because I hear you talking about in the back of my mind I'm thinking branding. Like there's a brand there. You just named three different very distinct brands, really,
Yeah.
with yourself being one of them, with the values-based, family-friendly films. That's a niche you've yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's very illuminating. So how do you find investors for your independent films?
Hmm. So there's three ways, and they all start with C. And this works not just for any film, but for anyone that's raising money or looking for investors or partners or anything like that. So the first C is content. I'm a big fan of content, but it's only one of the three C's for a reason. You can't just do content anymore. 15 years ago, you could pop up on Instagram, be a photographer, post every day, and get to 100,000 followers and have a career. That doesn't exist anymore, mainly because everything is TV now. So Instagram is not for photos and posts, it's for video. Same with TikTok, same with YouTube, same with everything. So, content, though, is where you take your values and your experiences and your results and you put them online. And so if you're servicing clients, if you're a coach and you say, let's shine a light on a client win where you go, hey, I started working with so and so 3 months ago. I had my first milestone where I got this outcome that I was hoping for. I'm so glad. Wow, you take that and you put it on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or wherever. And that's content where you're sharing your values and your results, right? So you want your values, your results, your experiences, all those things, and you're just putting out a constant stream of content. It's not just content for content's sake. It's not just to post because the algorithm gods say you need to post twice a day to feed their algorithm monster. No, you're posting with the purpose. You're giving every single post a job. And the job is either to build that brand, like you talked about, or to get people off the platform and into a flywheel or a sort of customer journey where you can say, look, here's an outcome that you can get if you come over here off of Instagram, off of LinkedIn, come over to my website, get on my email list. I'll send you a copy of my book. I'll send you something else that you value. So, using content really strategically to get those outcomes that you want is step one. So, I think everybody should have a presence online because if somebody Googles an outcome that they're looking for, you want to show up if that's the thing that you do. If you do, coaching, can you give me the one sentence of how you describe your business? I don't want to botch it up.
So I am building an independent multimedia business, but primarily centered around the concepts of positivity and the orchid model that I mentioned at the top. that orchid model for positive living to help people live happier, healthier lives.
Gotcha. So if I'm looking for a coach who really focuses on positivity and some media around positivity, I want to change my life. I'm down, I'm stressed, I'm
Yes.
depressed all the time. I want positivity and uplifting things. How do I
Exactly.
do it? You want to show up when people Google or use ChatGPT to find answers, right?
Right.
So that's where your content comes into play. If someone goes and Googles, independent producer Utah, I probably show up. If they Google Daren Smith, I definitely show up.
Mhm.
So you want to not cast a wide net, but you want to be present online so that the search engines and the AIs can find you.
Mhm.
So you got to be really clear about the outcome that you help people get. So your brand positioning is kind of like, here's what I do for this type of person, and it's different from these competitors this way, right? Because there's probably a million coaches that feel very similar,
Right.
but people need to identify you with one thing, whether it's positivity or the orchid model or whatever it is, and they go, "Oh, I want that version of this thing," right? So
Right.
if a film investor is looking to get into indie film and they go indie film on LinkedIn and I pop up, they're going to go, "Oh, meaningful media, stories that change people. That's what I want. I don't want to go do horror, blood splatter all over the place. I want meaningful media." Great. I got that. I'm trying to own that lane. So content. That's the first C. The second one is connectors. So investors are notoriously and intentionally hard to get in touch with because if they were easy to get in touch with, everybody would reach out to them all the time and they would
Yeah.
just spend their entire day receiving pitches of things that they don't want to invest in. So you need to find the connectors, the people that they already trust, that they're connected to, that bring them opportunities. And so every investor has them. They might have a family office where they have a managing director and people who are out there searching for opportunities. But they might be an angel investor, in which case they are looking for those opportunities themselves. So what you want to do is find the people who are connected to them and connect with those people.
Mhm.
So it might be someone that works at the same company. It might be someone you're connected to. It might be, oh, you notice that they're speaking at this convention or this film festival or this expo or whatever. I'm going to go to that thing, but I'm also going to see if I can connect with someone at the film festival. So can I find the programmer or can I find the director? Can I find someone who might be able to connect me to them? And I've done this dozens of times where I go to a film festival, I reach out to the someone at the festival who works there. I said, "Hey, I've never been to your festival before. I'd love to know like what's the stuff that I should do? How can I add value to your festival? I'm going to be there these days. If there's anyone you think I should connect with, I would love to do so." And 80% of the time they write back because they want people to come to their festival and they want people to add value. So they'll say, "Oh, there's a mixer this night and there's this person and this director and oh, I'd love to meet you." And then once I meet them and spend some time with them, because I have the charisma that you talked about or whatever, I have that sort of pull, then they go, "Oh my gosh, okay, you need to meet so and so." And then they walk me over and they say, "Hey, Brandon, this is Daren. I just talked to him. You need to meet." And Brandon trusts this person. So now we're talking. And Brandon is the millionaire, multimillionaire that has the money, but they are willing to talk to me for 5 or 10 minutes because of that intro, because of the
Right.
connector.
This is really
So it's thinking about that at scale.
strategic networking.
Yes,
Strategic
very
networking.
much
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So content connectors, the last one is communities. So there are communities of investors for almost every niche, right? You have people that invest in startups and people that are angel investors, people that do tech, people that do healthcare, people that do film. There's and media and all of these different areas. So with a little bit of searching, whether you use a ChatGPT or a Google or whatever, you can just search for angel groups in Utah or film investor communities or whatever, and they just are there. Like they exist. And so they exist because they want more investors to be part of their community. So they're online and they have a presence and those things. But you can also like LinkedIn is the place I tell everybody to go, whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're an artist, whatever, like that's where the investors are spending their time on social media thinking about opportunities. They're not doing that on Instagram. They're scrolling because they need to turn off their brain for a minute or because they want to get updates of their family and friends or whatever. So LinkedIn is where I spend my time on the content, but that's where I find my connectors and where I find my communities. So if I find someone that runs a community, they instantly become a connector. And I go, great, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to come to their thing. They're going to introduce me to the whole community. And those three together are a pretty potent trifecta of how to find and connect with investors.
And what is this fund that you've set up? Is it just for your films? Is it for all independent filmmakers? Just tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's part of the solution. So I mentioned that there's investors and filmmakers, distributors, and audience, these four kind of parties that are invested in this indie film model. And so this is solving the investor part of that, where it's really a bad investment to just put your money into an indie film. Like in any metric,
I
and this
was
is coming
just
from an indie
wondering that, like,
filmmaker,
what's in it for them, you know? So,
right?
right.
The riskiest thing you can do is put up $1 million of your money for a movie that's going to cost $1 million, and it's 100% equity financed, because now the movie has to make 3 to 4 times that in the box office to break even, or needs to make a lot in the post theatrical windows to get your money back. So very risky, not a smart investment, which is why it's really hard to get an investor to give you money for your indie film, because it's just not a responsible place for them to put their money. If they're doing it, it's because they like you or they know you or they trust you, or because they really are passionate about the story, or because they are willing to be charitable and say, I believe in you, and here's 50 grand or here's 500 grand or whatever it is. So the fund was really a solution to a problem of, I think that there's money and capital that is sitting either stranded or idle, meaning it wants to invest in indie film, but it can't because there's not a responsible way to do it. So my whole thesis with the fund was, well, let me create the responsible way to invest in indie film, meaning I can put this money in and realistically see a path to getting a profitable outcome and a movie in the meantime, right? So the fund model, we don't need to go into the weeds on it, but essentially it spreads the risk for the investor across a slate of films as opposed to one film. So they're diversifying their investment. It de-risks their investment. It makes it possible for them to make money on a number of projects, not just a single one. And then we support that with a whole bunch of infrastructure, like distribution already lined up, international sales already lined up, lending already lined up, tax incentives already lined up, so that they know their money is not 100% financing the movies. It represents only 40 to 60% of every movie's budget.
And what has the response been so far? And I'm not sure how many months you've, or even a year if you've had this open for very long, but what has the response been?
Yeah, it's been a little over a year. I started, the first time I talked about it publicly was November of 2024. So it's been
Okay,
about 15 or 16 months. The response is overwhelmingly positive. So
great.
people are going, wow, you actually did it. Like, you cracked it. You figured out a new model, and it seems like it will work. So there's a lot of interest from all of those parties that are involved. Um, the investor side, yesterday I was on a call with investor slash distributor. They're kind of a middleman in that world, but their response was, "Wow, you actually did it." Like, they've been
Wow.
waiting for a producer to figure out a different model, and here it is. And they're going, great, how can we help? That's my favorite question to hear from investors or partners in any regard is, how can I help? That means they're enrolled, and that means they're willing to give you what you need as long as they can do it. So with investors, they say, well, we're raising money now. We're committing all the capital by a certain date. At that point, we'll do the next capital call, and then we'll do a couple a year. They go, great, that sounds awesome. For the distributors, it's like, hey, I'm going to be bringing 3 to 4 films to market every year. If you want a partner that's going to consistently bring you this type of content, we should be talking. And they go, yeah, let's have a conversation. So just the whole model is really catalyzing a lot of people to enroll themselves and join us in the process.
Oh, that's incredible. And Darren, you have so much enthusiasm for this and so much energy. And I want to get to the upcoming film Brotherhood in a bit. But first, I have to ask you because I know my audience wants to know, like, how do you find all of this energy? Is it just because you're doing what you're most passionate about? Do you have a structure to your day that allows you to do all the things you're doing?
That is such a good question. We could spend the rest of the time on it. I want to say it's probably two or three things, but the first that comes to mind is gratitude. And
Gratitude.
so that to me is the best drug, right? Like I go on set and for religious reasons I don't drink coffee, I don't drink alcohol, and so I'm not using, let's call it, substances to like alter my brain chemistry and my energy levels, right?
Right.
I also don't drink energy drinks. I don't really drink caffeine. I try to stay away from soda, try to eat clean and all those things. But like, people often go, "You have energy, but you didn't have coffee today." Like, I'm like, "No, I've never had coffee. I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life."
Right.
Um, and they're like, "How?" I'm like, "Well, I get 8 hours of sleep, and I work out, and I'm healthy, and I eat,
Yeah.
I eat well. But the thing, the singular thing that gives me the most energy is that gratitude piece."
And I talk about that all the time on this show, so it's really validating to hear you say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I can think back to multiple times this year where it's not that I was feeling down, but I was just feeling maybe a little um sluggish or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember the last time I was in New York for celebrating my brother's 40th birthday. He lives in Manhattan, and we were walking down the street. My youngest brother, my brother that was turning 40, he's just younger than me, and my dad were all there. And I was a little behind because they were all talking and walking in this narrow sidewalks in New York.
Yeah.
And I just remember intentionally thinking about how grateful I am to be here. The fact that I had the money to be able to fly out, the time and the means to be able to be here and be present and not be on my phone and worrying about calls and scheduling and budgets and all that stuff. Like I could take a day or two off, and that my gratitude for my wife supporting, so that she could be home with the kids. She works full time, but she was taking on extra because she would have to get up early and she'd have to put the kids to bed and do all this stuff. And just the overwhelming rush of gratitude where I was nearly to tears and just smiling, going, man, what a life. Like how much gratitude I had in that moment. And like the best thing about that is it's free and you
Yes.
can do it anytime as much as you want. You can literally
Yes.
just sit there and shift your thinking from social media or all the crap that's going on in the world or politics or economics or the market or anything or your career or whatever's getting you down. You can literally just shift and like mentally just kind of wipe the whiteboard clean and go, what do I want to put on the whiteboard? And it's all gratitude, and just sit there for 2 3 minutes and think of three things that you're really grateful for today or in general or in your life. And it's crazy, in 2 to 3 minutes you could just completely change your brain chemistry and feel good,
Yes,
and
you
it's
can.
free. Like it's
Yes,
crazy. So
exactly.
that's it for me. Like that's the main thing is the gratitude.
That's fantastic. Wow. Well, okay, so let's do talk about Brotherhood, which is the
Awesome.
film that tell us like what stage are you at? What is the film about? Because people won't have heard of this yet. So tell us everything that you can.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm actually going to pull this up because it's better if I read it than
Sure.
if I try to remember. I can give you the one sentence version, but that one's not as fun. So let's give people the full version. I'm going to keep talking and talking and talking until I pull it up. And so just bear with me 1 second. Where is it? Brotherhood. There it is. Okay. I love this. This is from the one page like overview that was written by Ross Booth, our writer director.
Okay.
Brotherhood is a movie musical under development by writer, director, music producer Ross Booth. The project continues his mission to create music driven films, concerts, and theatrical experiences that inspire hope in the world. The film is being produced by Daren Smith of Craftsman Films and is slated for production this spring for a fall 2026 release. It's the debut feature from Craftsman's Producer Fund 1. The summary is: as immigrant families across the United States face uncertainty and fear, and as America grapples amid a sea of misinformation and misrepresentation of Christian values, Brotherhood issues a call to every American to reconsider the message of one of the most beloved patriotic anthems: America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. So, Brotherhood tells the story of two next door neighbors, John, a white U.S. citizen, and Fabian, a Mexican immigrant, stuck in more than a decade long holding pattern awaiting progress of his U.S. asylum application. The plot follows the experience of the two men and their families as they navigate the difficulties of 2025 and 2026, and are awakened to a deeper sense of what it means to be American and to love thy neighbor as thyself. The project is intended as an agent of self reflection, inviting audiences through an emotionally powerful, music driven experience to question what America means to them and how their beliefs drive their actions.
Wow. So, how did you come across this project?
Oh, I love that question. So, Ross and I were at school together. We both went to Brigham Young University here in Provo, Utah, 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago. And we crossed paths there. We have known each other for that whole time. We've never worked together, but as quote unquote coincidence would have it, and you and I feel
Right.
the same way about coincidences.
Right.
I was sitting at lunch with a group of guy friends that we meet up with every month, and we were sitting outside of a restaurant, and Ross comes out of the restaurant, and I was like, Ross, dude, I haven't
Um,
seen you in forever.
wow.
And I was like, man, we should catch up. I haven't, I would love to know what you're up to. And he's like, man, I got a project I want to tell you about. It's like, great, let's do it. So a week or two later, we're eating lunch and he's telling me about Brotherhood. And at the time, it was an idea. He's like, look, I just wrapped up a bunch of projects. I've had this idea the last few months with everything that's going on. I feel like I have to do something. I don't know what to do, but I feel like this is something I can do. So he tells me kind of the plot and what the story is about. I was like, man, if you pull this off, that's like going to be really impactful. One of
Yeah.
my trigger
Im-
words, right?
Impact,
So I
right.
said, keep me in the loop, man. Like, let me know how it's going and keep me in the loop. 5 weeks later, Ross has finished the script, written
Oh,
14 original songs, and is
wow.
inviting me to a live preview of the script where he's going to read the script top to bottom and perform all 14 original songs live. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's
Like, you wrote a movie and
incredible.
14, 15 original songs in a month and a week? That's insane. So I went. This was a Friday night and he did it. I mean, he did it. The movie is
Wow.
probably 65, 70% of the way there compared to where it is now. But I was like, oh my gosh. And there were about a dozen people that he invited to that first preview. And I looked over my shoulder and I looked around and I'm like, are there any other producers here? Because I'm gonna fight them off for this thing. Like that's the tension piece. I have to produce this.
Right.
And throughout the whole thing, I'm thinking leverage, leverage, leverage. Oh, I could connect this dot to this dot to this dot. I can architect it this way to
Mhm.
create a whole bunch of leverage. So, the end of the night, and oddly enough, sitting right next to me was a person that he invited to, potentially be one of the cast members. And it just came out yesterday that Casey Elliott is one of our leads in the movie. He was
Oh,
sitting right next to me that opening night.
wow,
So
congratulations.
Ross, thank you. Ross was really strategic about who he invited in the room. So we met up on Monday. So this was a Friday night. We met up 3 days later on a Monday and we sat down to another lunch. And I'm sitting there going, how do I get this movie to be part of my fund? And he's sitting there going, how do I get Daren to produce my movie? And so after about 5 minutes, we're like, oh, we want the same thing. Let's do this. So
Right.
2 days later, we had a short term agreement in place. And he goes, by the way, one of the other people I invited on Friday night is a wealthy individual, and she said she's interested in helping with this thing. Will you help me figure out what's the budget and like how to do this thing? We're meeting with her on Friday, the same week.
Oh,
So like
wow.
Friday night we had the preview, Monday we meet up, Wednesday we have an agreement, Friday we're sitting down pitching this couple on the movie. I tell them the budget, and they said, "Great, let's do it." So we
My
have
goodness.
we had our full equity portion, which is about 50% of the budget of the movie, within a week. So 6 weeks from idea to funded movie. Talk about momentum and
Like, does that
enrollment and all the
ever
things we've been
happen?
talking about.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
came together pretty well.
So
So
what stage are you at now with
yeah, I was
with
just
the
going to
movie?
say, we are in what's called development. So we're still in the phase of developing the movie where we're doing what's called packaging. We're finding all of our key collaborators, our actors, and our crew. We're putting together the rest of the financial structure. So tax incentives and lending and pre-sales and minimum guarantees and all of the stuff like that. That's my job on the producing side. Ross is really focused on cast and crew. We've got our budget together. We've got our schedule. We're planning to shoot starting mid-April. So if you back up from that 4 weeks, that's our pre-production time. That
Mhm.
starts mid-March. So a month from now,
Yeah.
we'll be in what's called pre-production, which is where everybody who's been hired on the movie starts working. So the costume designers are putting together all the costumes, and the cinematographers doing camera tests, and the location people are finding locations, et cetera, so that we can be ready to start filming on April 16th. And so this movie has a lot of elements. We've already recorded all the music. We don't have the vocals yet, but we've recorded all the music for all 17 songs now.
Wow.
And so that was part of development. The script is still going through notes and revisions. I'm talking with distributors and partners on that front. So all the things are happening at the same time so that we can be ready for pre-production, ready for production. And like I said, we're aiming to release this in October of this year. So that's a
Oh,
bold
that's
claim with a movie that hasn't even been shot yet, but
right. That's pretty
we can
soon
get
for
there.
everything
Yeah.
that still has to be
Yeah,
done.
pretty nuts.
So in October of this year, do you have any idea where it will be released or distributed? Or that is
Yeah,
that
so
what you're
like
working on now?
I'm working on it, but we have a deal in place, like a letter of intent in place with a distributor who's interested in doing all the movies through the fund.
Mhm.
They're more of what's called a service provider, so they're not um, pre-buying or licensing or doing any sort of minimum guarantee on the movie. They're not committing any capital. They're saying, I can do the job of taking your movie and putting it in theaters. I can call the bookers and I can find the theaters that want it and we can get it into a couple hundred theaters. So that's in place regardless. But the conversations I'm having with distributors are if there's interest out there, remember supply and demand.
Yeah.
So I'm just talking to a lot of distributors to make sure I'm having enough conversations to be in the proper balance of supply and demand. But my thesis is there's probably a distributor out there who would love this movie and understands that at the budget we're at, it doesn't take that much to go and make it a success, make it a profitable outcome. So if they can come in with, a few $1 million worth of commitments for marketing and advertising, and we bring a movie that costs about $2 million, then hey, that's a good partnership and we can do it together. So those are the conversations I'm having now. My hope is that we'll have a decision by the end of February so we know going into the movie what the distribution plan is. So that's a big part of the model is distribution up front. We know what that's going to happen. We know how it's going to happen and with who so that we're not making a movie and spending all this money and hoping that there's someone out there that wants it. That's a bad strategy.
Right. Right. And do you know yet where people might be able to see it, like when it's released?
So there will be, I mean, it'll be not necessarily a wide release, but it'll be all across the country and
Oh,
hopefully some
great.
international
Okay.
territories as well. We'd love to do a release simultaneously in Mexico and Latin America because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
So, at minimum, we're probably talking 400 or 500 screens. If
Okay.
there's a bigger distributor that wants to come in and do it across 1 to 2,000 screens, then that's, totally up to them. They can do that. So it will really be everywhere. The best place right now for people to go is brotherhoodmovie.com. They can put
Okay.
in their email address. They get a whole bunch of access to like updates that we've been sending out over the last few months. There's some behind the scenes videos we've captured that are exclusive for email subscribers. And we're constantly putting out updates on social media as well as our email list for those that are following along. At some point, about a month before the movie comes out, we'll have a pre-buy or pre-release tickets where you can like purchase your tickets in the form of a discount code and then convert it into a ticket when the actual theater in your neighborhood opens up. The way it works with indie film is it's really hard because you can say I'm releasing on October 2nd, but the theaters don't even know that yet, right? They don't know that they're going to carry your movie until sometimes the week before because
Oh, I
the
see.
the theater windows are like Thursday midnight or Thursday evening to the next Thursday day. So like call
Yeah.
it Friday to Thursday is their week. So they're going to look at the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and if it's a 12 plex, there's 12 screens in there, then the bottom two or three or four movies, as far as revenue per screen, are on the chopping block. And
Right.
if there's new movies that are coming out, and this movie made $500, and the new movie coming out, they think it will make more than $500, then they'll swap them. But
Yeah.
you don't know that until that weekend happens. So on our last movies, we would find out on Monday, Tuesday, sometimes even Wednesday that we're going to be in that theater on Friday. So it
Oh,
makes
I
it
see.
really, really hard to,
Yeah.
to get your
Yeah.
audience to show up when you only give them 24 hours notice.
Yeah.
We're solving that by doing the pre-sales model where you can buy a ticket,
Oh.
quote unquote ticket, meaning a code, and then you can convert that code into a ticket once the theater makes it available.
Oh, that's a great, great idea.
Yeah,
So that's wonderful. So, folks, that's brotherhoodmovie.com, and I will put that link in the show notes.
thank you.
That's wonderful. So we're getting closer to the end of our interview here, Darren. I wanted to ask you a couple more questions though. One has to do with your career changes because something my listeners know I'm focused on is career pivots. It's something I've done myself a few times, and you have done you've done a lot of that as you outlined. What would your advice be, like high level, top level advice for someone who is considering a career change?
Mm. It's an identity change. So you have to, it's like a decision. And the word decision is like there's a cut in there. Like the Latin base of decision is like the incision or the cut. So you're like, it's not a smooth transition. It's a decision that you're making to pivot. And so when you pivot, you're going a different direction. You can't keep straddling the line because if you keep doing that, you're going to get spread too thin. So the clearest example I have is when I was a post-production sound guy. I had a company called Smith Studios, and everybody knew me as a sound guy. I was doing live music on the weekends at a local venue, and I was doing post-production sound during the week, doing movies and post-production sound for movies. And when I decided I was going to be a producer, remember the word decided, I
Hmm.
I had to cut off those other things and go all in on producing. And that was really hard because for about 2 years, I kept getting calls to do sound,
Yeah.
whether it's post production or live sound. And I would have to say, even if my bank account was low and the gig would really be great, I had to say, I don't do that anymore. I'm a producer. And there were maybe one or two friends that I would secretly behind the scenes do sound for because I love doing sound, but no one could hire me. I was not for hire anymore. I had to shut that business down and stop doing it. It happened again recently, last year, 2 years ago, before I raised the fund. I had to cut off Craftsman Creative, which is a
Yeah.
business I started in 2020 during the pandemic,
Yeah.
which had courses and consulting and coaching and a community and all these things, the full like creator business model. I had to just hard shut it down. I sold the business, the online course business, and I turned off all the consulting and coaching. I don't have clients anymore, and I shut down the community, which the business was doing 6 figures a year, and I had to shut it down so that I could go raise money, which doesn't pay very well, for as long as it takes. It's been a year and a half. It was a year before I started paying myself anything from the
Wow.
movie.
Wow.
So you have to make the decision, and then you also have to be okay or have a plan for this might take a while. It could
Yes.
be a year or two until it's sustainable to the point where it's paying your bills. And it might be
Yes.
3 years until it's profitable and you can hire someone else to help you. Like years, not months, not weeks, but years of time. So if your plan is I'm tired of my day job and I have this passion and I'm just going to go all in on it, the question I would ask is, do you have a plan for 2 years, how
Hmm.
you're going to take care of your life? Because if you
Hmm.
don't, I wouldn't make the jump. Start doing the thing on the side
Hmm.
and improve your craft and start posting content and start doing outreach and find your connectors and find all that stuff and say, yeah, I have this day job. That's just keeping me afloat while I start building this other thing on the side. And as soon as something clicks, then you can make the leap. When you know that you've got a safety net there, or when you know you've got clients, or you have you're oversubscribed on your business, the supply and demand is in the proper balance. Because if you go out there and you say, I'm a coach and I
Hmm.
left my $80,000 a year job, and now you've got to come up with a way to make $5,000 or $10,000 a month to be profitable from zero,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen overnight. And
Right.
so it's really thinking long term and being really strategic and architecting and producing the outcomes that you want to have. And that's why I wrote this last book, the blockbuster book with the movie framework. It's all very on brand for us filmmakers, but it really is for everybody who's wanting to do that. Not just make a career pivot or transition, but like how do you actually build a profitable creative business? And part of the answer is it takes time. Like
Yeah.
you have to give yourself enough time for all of the systems and flywheels to start working at the scale where it actually delivers the outcome that you're looking for.
Yes. Well, well said. And I will link to that book, Blockbuster, as I mentioned at the top. I also want to ask you, before I get to the final question, is there anything else you'd like my listeners to know? Anything you want to add?
Hmm. Oh gosh, that's such an open-ended question. Um, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I will say there, one of the books that was like an inflection point for me was a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by
Mm.
Cal Newport.
Mhm.
So link to that one for sure.
I
But
will.
the premise of that book is that it's not about passion. And so there are plenty of people. There's an abundance of creators, whether it's screenwriters, filmmakers, actors, writers, etc., who have a passion for the thing that they want to do. That that isn't it. That's not what gets you the business. It's the systems, it's the methodology, the frameworks, the day to day showing up and doing the work and making progress every day. That's what it takes. And so, if you feel like you're really passionate, but it's not working out, it's not about having more passion. It's not about getting more craft. It's not about doing more art. It's about a different system that you're building on top of, a different foundation. And so I would really think about, okay, where can I find a framework that aligns with my values, that aligns with the way that I want to build this business? Because, man, there's plenty of hustle culture bros online that'll sell you supplements and a program and a journal and workout vest,
Yes.
but that might not align with your values. And so that doesn't mean you will never succeed. It just means that way of doing it is not for you. So find the mentors, find the guides, find the people where you can kind of call the destination and ask for directions. That's a really
Mm-hmm.
good shortcut. Find the people that align with your values and then use the frameworks that are out there that they're putting out in the world, and realize that it's not just about posting online. That's
Yes.
a tactic. That's not a framework. So
Right.
look for frameworks. Find the people that are writing and talking about those things, like myself. Yes, I'm putting in a shameless plug here, but like there's plenty of mentors that I have learned from, the Derek Sivers of the world, the Cal Newports of the world, the Dan Priestleys of the world, the my goodness, the Tony Robbins, and all of these great mentors of mine that I have either met or have not met. Um, Joe Pulizzi is another one that I should throw out there. So there's plenty of people where I go, man, they are writing and talking about this stuff. They have frameworks that they're publishing online. I can just read their books and do what they say and have outcomes. Yes. And
Yes.
like a lot
Yes.
of the success I'm having now is because of those mentors I just mentioned. And so I still every week listen to Cal Newport's podcast. And I still, every time Derek Sivers writes a book, I've got, there, you can't probably see them, but I got five of them right here. They're signed covers,
Oh,
signed on the
are
covers
they?
because
Okay.
he writes a book every year or two. And I go, yes, I will spend the $15 to get that book and to get all of that knowledge downloaded into my brain so that it informs what I'm doing with Craftsman Films and Producer Fund One. So find your
Exactly.
mentors, find the frameworks that align with your values, and go that way instead of just like, I need more passion. I must not be passionate enough. Oh, I need to do another degree or another course or another thing and improve my craft. No, it's probably not that. It's probably more of a marketing and positioning thing where you need to understand the economics at play and you need to go get oversubscribed.
That is terrific. And that I'm going to insert something here because the people whom I often hear from for career coaching and career change actually have the opposite problem, that they are doing something that pays really well, that has all of the structure and all of the oversubscription, and they have no passion for it at all.
Mm,
And that is a different problem, folks, from from what Darren is talking about here.
yeah.
If you are lucky enough to have the passion for what you want to do, then you have to put these systems in place to ensure that you'll be successful
Yep.
following your passion.
Well said.
Yeah. So, Darren, you know that the motto of Positive Vibes is keep on the sunny side. So, how do you keep on the sunny side?
Awesome. I love this question and thank you for asking it. Um, I think everyone, I will say, should have a spiritual practice.
Mhm.
So, whether you have a faith and a belief in God or a creator or a higher power or the universe, that's not the issue. Like, I have a faith in God, I believe in a creator, I believe in a savior, like I'm a Christian. And so that's my belief system. And it doesn't have to be yours for this answer to apply. But I think having a spiritual practice, and I love that phrase, spiritual practice,
Yeah.
because it's not a thing you ever perfect. It's not a it's not something
Right.
you arrive at. It's like, okay, I'm done practicing, I have arrived. No, no, no. It's a practice for your whole life. So whatever that looks like for you, my version for those that are interested, daily scripture and scripture study, daily meditation, daily prayer, a Sabbath day where there's a day of rest
Yes.
and attending church and serving and being part of a congregation of people that are worshiping together. Um, finding time and making sure that there's a balance where the spiritual part of my day, my life, my week is there. Because if you do an accounting, and you go, okay, I've got whatever, 16 waking hours every day, which is,
Yeah.
I don't do public math. So let's do this. 16 times 7 is
Public math.
112 hours a week. Well,
Hmm.
let's round down because you're not going to be perfectly optimized. Some days you're going to sleep in or go to bed
Right.
early, whatever. You're going to be sick one day. So let's call it 100 hours a week that you have. Well, in the Christian belief system, there's this idea of a tithe. It's
Mhm.
10%, right? 10% of your increase
Right.
goes back to God and to be used to, build the kingdom and to bless others' lives. So what does a tithe of your time look like? Well, that's probably 10% or 10 hours a week. Interesting. So I did this a few years ago where I was like, well, where am I at? And between the church service on Sundays and weeknights where I'm going and visiting people and serving people and helping with the youth group and then all of the daily scripture study and practice and stuff that I was doing, I tallied it up to be like I think it was an average of 8 hours on Sundays and 2 hours on Wednesdays and Tuesdays, so that's 12 hours and then another hour a day on average. So whatever that is, 12 plus 7, so, it was about 20 hours a week that I was counting as my spiritual practice, whether it's service or personal study or those things. It's like, okay, well, I'm in the good range. Like that's
Yeah.
20% of my time. Right
Yeah.
now I'm in a position in my church where I am serving more, and so that's more time. But if I took that out, I would still be doing about 7 to 10 hours a week. That's the right amount. That's a tithe. That's
Yeah.
10%. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in a good range. And then utilizing that time to be really intentional, and the same way that, you can focus on gratitude, you can spend that time focusing on that relationship with God or the universe or your creator and deepening your understanding and deepening your spirituality and using that time to practice those things and to get better at it. And
Yeah.
so I think for me, that's the answer on the sunny side. Like gratitude is wrapped in there, but the bigger answer is that there's a spiritual practice, there's a belief, there's a faith, there's a hope, um, with something bigger than myself and my life and my week and my day and the problems that I'm dealing with on Producer Fund One. Like there's this bigger picture that I need to be reminded of on a daily basis to have that perspective that keeps me on the sunny side.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that with us, because I think listeners have heard me say, or if they've followed my newsletter, they know that participating in a faith community, having some faith or spiritual practice, as you're saying, is actually associated with greater longevity. So people who live the longest lives, when they've done, scientific studies of this, they found that those people are much more likely to have a religious or spiritual practice that they do regularly.
Yeah.
So I think it's very much tied in with everything I'm talking about with optimism, positive mindset, health, gratitude. It's all tied into that. And I'll put this out there for my listeners. If you want to get my guide to positive living, you will actually find that one of the pillars is faith, practicing a faith. So
Yes.
you can get that, and I will on my website. I will put the link to that, and I'll have more on that later. But Daren, I want to thank you so much for sharing that, or for sharing how you keep on the sunny side, and for telling us all about this amazing life that you've built for yourself. So,
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Great questions. I appreciate all the thought that went into having me on as a guest, and really, looking forward to hearing from your audience. If you have questions, you can reach out. But what a great time and a great opportunity to chat with you again.
and Daren, where can my audience reach you if they have questions about what we've talked about or about the film? Is it just Brotherhood movie, or is there somewhere else they could reach you or follow you?
Yeah, for me, everything's at craftsmanfilms.co. So craftsman, MAN, films.co. Everything's there. There's hundreds of blog posts. There's a free copy of my book, Blockbuster. So if you head over there and you sign up in the welcome email, I'll send you a link to where you can read the book online for free and get a PDF copy and all those things. So I want as many people to be able to read it as possible. So head over to craftsmanfilms.co. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the only social network that I'm on right now. I've been having a good time over there building a community and a network of people interested in meaningful media. So if that's you, come say hi, come find me, and it's a good time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Daren.
Thank you.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shine.